Before The Cosby Show made TV history in the 1980s, Bill Cosby starred in a forgotten sitcom that broke revolutionary ground. No laugh track, lost master tapes, legendary guest stars, and a theme song with nonsense lyrics inspired by his grandfather's speech. Dive into the bizarre behind-the-scenes secrets of television's most overlooked trailblazer. Fact 1. First African-American eponymous comedy series. When The Bill Cosby Show premiered on NBC in September of 1969, it quietly made television history in a way that often gets overlooked. This wasn't just another sitcom with a black lead actor. It was the first comedy series ever named after and starring an African-American performer. While Bill Cosby had already broken barriers as the first black actor to star in a dramatic series with I Spy from 1965 to 1968, this new venture represented something entirely different. He wasn't playing second fiddle to a white co-star or filling a supporting role. His name was literally in the title, and he was the undisputed star of the show. The series positioned Cosby as Chet Kincaid, a bachelor physical education teacher and coach at a Los Angeles high school, living his life and solving everyday problems without his race being the central focus of every storyline. This was revolutionary for the time period, coming just 5 years after the Civil Rights Act, and during an era when television was still figuring out how to portray African Americans beyond stereotypical roles. The show arrived before other groundbreaking series like The Flip Wilson Show, which debuted a year later in 1970. What makes this historical significance even more interesting is how often it gets confused with or overshadowed by Cosby's later mega hit, The Cosby Show, which premiered in 1984. That confusion is understandable given the similar titles, but this earlier series blazed the trail. It proved to network executives that an African American could carry a comedy series bearing their own name, setting an important precedent that would influence television programming for decades to come. Fact 2. NBC guaranteed 2 full seasons. NBC's desperation to secure Bill Cosby for this sitcom led to one of the most unusual contracts in television history. The network was so eager to work with Cosby, fresh off his Emmy-winning success on I Spy, that they offered him something virtually unheard of in the television industry: an ironclad guarantee that the series would run for at least 2 full seasons, no matter what happened. This meant that regardless of ratings, critical reception, or any other factors that typically determine a show's fate, The Bill Cosby Show was protected from cancellation for a minimum of 52 episodes. Such deals were extraordinarily rare in an era when networks routinely pulled struggling shows after just a few episodes, sometimes even mid-season. The contract essentially removed all the normal risk that comes with launching a new television series. Cosby didn't have to worry about whether audiences would immediately embrace the show or whether critics would give it positive reviews during that crucial first season. He had the security of knowing he'd have 2 years to find his footing, develop the characters, and build an audience. This unprecedented arrangement reflected just how valuable NBC considered Cosby to be as a talent and how much they wanted him back on their network. The gamble paid off commercially as the show finished 11th in the ratings during its first season, making it a solid hit. However, when those 2 guaranteed seasons ended, so did the series, leading many to believe that NBC chose not to renew it specifically because Cosby had insisted on certain creative controls, particularly his refusal to add a laugh track that the network found difficult to accept. Fact 3. Revolutionary no-laugh track sitcom. One of the most distinctive and controversial aspects of The Bill Cosby Show was something viewers didn't hear. There was no laugh track. In an era when virtually every half-hour comedy relied on canned laughter or a live studio audience to tell viewers when something was funny, Cosby made the bold decision to trust his audience's intelligence. He fought NBC executives repeatedly over this issue, firmly believing that people watching at home were smart enough to recognize humor without being prompted by artificial laughter. According to commentary included on the Season 1 DVD release, this disagreement became a major source of tension between Cosby and the network throughout the show's run. The laugh track debate wasn't just about artistic preference. It represented 2 completely different philosophies about what television comedy should be. NBC worried that without that audio cue, viewers might not perceive the show as funny, potentially leading to lower ratings. Cosby, however, wanted to create something more subtle and realistic, focusing on character development and situational comedy rather than obvious punchlines followed by laugh breaks. At the time, only a handful of non-drama sitcoms had attempted to air without laugh tracks or studio audiences, including The Trouble with Father and The Beulah Show. While some comedy dramas already aired without laugh tracks, sitcoms almost universally used them, with most being filmed before studio audiences. This made The Bill Cosby Show genuinely unique among its peers and gave it a more naturalistic, low-key feel that set it apart from shows like The Brady Bunch or other family sitcoms of the era. Fact 4. Theme song's nonsense lyrics. Based on Grandfather. The opening theme song of The Bill Cosby Show, titled Hickey Burr, remains one of the most bizarre and memorable pieces of television music from the late 1960s. Co-written by Bill Cosby and legendary producer Quincy Jones, the funky instrumental featured Cosby himself providing vocals, but instead of actual words, he sang what can only be described as complete nonsense. Phrases like, "Gonna get some raggets and some rolls and re-Eisenreisen," and "half a pound of Kraggles" filled the theme, leaving viewers wondering what language Cosby was speaking or if he was just making sounds. The truth behind these strange lyrics is actually quite touching. According to sources who discussed the show's production, these nonsensical food references were Cosby's way of recreating his grandfather's speech patterns from when Bill was just a child. His grandfather apparently had a distinctive way of talking about food and cooking that stuck with young Cosby, and decades later, he channeled those childhood memories into the show's theme song. This wasn't entirely new territory for Cosby. He had been using similar nonsense vocal patterns in his early stand-up comedy albums, including his first album where similar sounds appeared. The theme song was so distinctive that it even inspired other performers. The Monkees reportedly nodded to Cosby's nonsense word style in their song No Time, though some sources debate whether this was a direct reference since that song came out in 1967 before Hickey Burr was written. Regardless, the theme became iconic enough that when a 5-minute version was released on Quincy Jones's 1971 album Smackwater Jack, fans could finally enjoy the full funky experience. Fact 5. Legendary bassist Carol Kaye. Wash. Created iconic bass line behind the infectious groove of the Hickey Burr theme song was one of the most prolific studio musicians in recording history. Carol Kaye, a bassist who had played on literally thousands of hit records throughout the 1960s, was Quincy Jones's first and only choice for creating the bass line. Jones reportedly told Kaye that he wouldn't do a film or television show without her during that period because he loved her sound, her ability to create memorable parts that fit any musical style, and her exceptional sight-reading skills. When it came time to record Hickey Burr in 1969, Jones essentially turned Kaye loose and let her improvise. She wasn't given a written bass line to follow. Instead, she was encouraged to create something that would make the track cook. Working with her trademark Fender precision bass, strung with medium-gauge flat-wound strings and picking with a heavy pick close to the end of the neck, Kaye crafted that memorable funky bass line in just 1 or 2 takes. She later recalled that Jones simply let her do what she wanted, which was exactly what they needed. Kaye's technique involved picking the way you tap your foot, downstrokes on downbeats and upstrokes on upbeats, using her wrist as a pivot point. To achieve the perfect tone, she taped a doubled-up piece of felt over the strings at the bridge to eliminate overtones that could muddy the sound. Her work on Hickey Burr became so iconic that fellow bass legend Nathan East later said he'd never forget the thrill of learning her bass line, and he spent time impressing his friends with it after mastering the part. Fact 6. Original master tapes mysteriously disappeared. The music created for The Bill Cosby Show in 1969 was recorded during jam sessions at Warner Brothers' 7 Art Studios in Burbank, California throughout July, August, and September of that year. These sessions featured some of the biggest names in jazz, captured on master tapes that should have been preserved as important pieces of television and music history. However, somewhere between 1969 and 2004, those original master tapes completely vanished. Nobody knows exactly what happened to them, whether they were lost during a studio movie, accidentally destroyed, stolen, or simply misplaced in a warehouse somewhere. When producers wanted to release an album called The Original Jam Sessions 1969 in 2004, they faced a significant problem. Without the original master tapes, they couldn't create a proper release using the intended recordings. Instead, they had to rely on whatever secondary sources they could find, tape transfers that had been made from the original masters years earlier for various purposes. The album that was eventually released consisted mostly of alternate takes rather than the versions that actually aired on television, because those were the only recordings that still existed. The liner notes for the 2004 CD specifically mention that the music heard on the release was never originally intended for public consumption, and that the source material came from tape transfers derived from the original masters, which had long since disappeared. This means modern listeners have never actually heard the true intended final versions of much of the show's music in high quality, making those lost master tapes something of a holy grail for music archivists and fans of Quincy Jones's work. Fact 7. Mark Hamill's first professional TV role. Years before Mark Hamill would become a household name as Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, he was a struggling young actor trying to break into the television industry. His very first professional television role came in December of 1970 when he appeared in an episode of The Bill Cosby Show titled The Poet. Hamill played a character named Henry, a gentle-hearted, poetry-loving high school student who found himself in a confrontation with other students. In the scene that would launch his professional career, Hamill's character tried to stand up to bullies by telling them, "All right, you goons have had your fun. Now, why don't you just cool it?" When one of the antagonists stole his book, Hamill's character responded by throwing 2 punches that didn't even make his opponent flinch, after which he was thrown against a wall before Cosby's character Chet Kincaid intervened to break up the fight decades later. When footage of this early appearance surfaced on social media in 2019, Hamill himself responded with memories of the experience. He revealed that this was his very first job as a professional actor on television, and he never actually saw the episode because he was in college at the time and didn't own a VCR to record it. More surprisingly, Hamill shared that working with Bill Cosby was quite different from what he expected. Cosby was very serious and all business, Hamill recalled, noting that he was far from the lovable character on his comedy albums. This experience became Hamill's first lesson in understanding the difference between public personas and private behavior in the entertainment industry. Fact 8. Henry Fonda's rare TV appearance. Hollywood legend. Henry Fonda had built his career on prestigious film roles and stage performances, making his appearances on episodic television extremely rare and noteworthy. When he agreed to guest star in The Bill Cosby Show's first season episode titled The Elevator Doesn't Stop Here Anymore, which aired in January of 1970, it became one of the most memorable installments of the entire series. The episode was essentially a bottle episode, with almost the entire story taking place in a single location, a broken school elevator. Fonda played Joshua Richards, an untouchably reserved English teacher who gets trapped overnight in the elevator alongside Cosby's character Chet Kincaid and a cleaning lady played by Elsa Lanchester. The three-hander episode became a masterclass in acting and comedic timing, with the characters forced to find ways to pass the time while waiting for rescue. In one memorable sequence, Cosby's character teaches Fonda's character how to play 20 questions, leading to genuinely funny interactions between the two performers. The episode is often cited as the best of the entire series, praised for its stripped-down approach that focused entirely on character development and natural humor, rather than relying on elaborate setups or physical comedy. Critics and fans particularly noted how effectively the episode used its limited setting, with the tension and frustration of being trapped creating comedy organically. For many viewers and television historians, this episode represents everything The Bill Cosby Show was trying to achieve. Intelligent, character-driven comedy that trusted its performers and its audience to find humor in realistic situations. Fact 9. Elsa Lanchester played non-English-speaking character. The same elevator episode that featured Henry Fonda also showcased another Hollywood legend in an unusual role. Elsa Lanchester, forever known as the Bride of Frankenstein from the iconic 1935 horror film, appeared as Mrs. Wochuk, the school's cleaning lady who becomes the third person trapped in the broken elevator overnight. What made her character particularly interesting was a creative choice that added an extra layer of difficulty to the already tense situation. Mrs. Wochuk spoke almost no English. According to the episode guide, her English vocabulary was essentially limited to the greeting, "How do you do?" This language barrier created natural, comedic, and dramatic tension as three people stuck in a confined space struggled to communicate and comfort each other through a long, uncertain night. The limitation forced the actors to rely heavily on physical comedy, facial expressions, and tone of voice to convey meaning, giving Lanchester a chance to showcase her considerable skills as a character actress. Interestingly, Lanchester appeared in multiple episodes of The Bill Cosby Show beyond the famous elevator installment. She returned in a second-season episode titled The Power of the Trees, where she played an eccentric woman who recruits Chet into helping save a tree from being cut down at a construction site. In both appearances, Lanchester brought her distinctive screen presence and decades of professional experience to roles that easily could have been forgettable supporting parts. Her willingness to appear on a television sitcom during this era, like Henry Fonda's guest appearance, reflected the show's growing prestige and Bill Cosby's ability to attract major talent to the series. Fact 10. Two different actresses played Mother Rose. One of the most significant but rarely discussed changes in The Bill Cosby Show happened between its first and second seasons when the show replaced the actress playing Chet Kincaid's Mother Rose. During the entire first season, which aired from September of 1969 through the spring of 1970, veteran actress Lillian Randolph portrayed the character. Randolph brought decades of experience to the role, having worked in radio, film, and television since the 1930s, and was particularly known for her voice work on the Amos and Andy radio program. She created a warm, nurturing version of Rose Kincaid that fit well with the show's gentle, family-oriented tone. However, when the second season began in September of 1970, viewers who paid close attention noticed that Rose Kincaid suddenly had a different face. Bea Richards, a highly respected actress who had been nominated for an Academy Award for her performance in the 1967 film Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, took over the role for the show's entire second and final season. The show never addressed this change within the storyline, never explained what happened to cause the replacement, and simply moved forward with Richards in the part. This type of casting change wasn't uncommon in television during that era. Shows frequently replaced actors without explanation, expecting viewers to simply accept the new performer and move on. What makes this particular switch interesting is the caliber of both actresses involved. Both Randolph and Richards were accomplished performers with impressive resumes, and either could have carried the role effectively throughout the show's run. The reason for the change remains unclear, lost to time, and the lack of detailed production records from the series. Fact 11. Episode satirized Sesame Street. In one of the more cleverly titled episodes of The Bill Cosby Show's second season, the Sesame Street Rumble aired in January of 1971. And took aim at one of television's newest phenomena. Sesame Street had debuted on PBS just over a year earlier in November of 1969 and had quickly become a cultural sensation, with parents and educators praising its innovative approach to teaching children through television. The Bill Cosby Show episode built its entire plot around the new show's popularity with young viewers. In the story, Chet Kincaid's television set blows a fuse right as he's preparing to watch an important football game with a house full of guests. Desperate to find another television, he goes to his young nephew Davy's house to borrow his set. However, Davy absolutely refuses to give up the television because Sesame Street is coming on, and he's determined to watch his beloved educational program. This leads Chet into a lengthy attempt to prove to his nephew that Sesame Street isn't the only way of learning, even going so far as to argue that the letter E is not that hot. The episode represents one of the earliest satirical examinations of Sesame Street's teaching methods by another television program, coming at a time when the PBS show was still relatively new and its impact on children's education was just beginning to be understood. Rather than being a general lampoon of the show's content or characters, the script focused more on the cultural phenomenon of children becoming so attached to the program that they had prioritized it over everything else, including family obligations. Fact 12. Comedy Legends, Moms Mabley and Mantan Moreland. The Bill Cosby Show made a point of featuring veteran African-American performers who had spent decades in entertainment, and one episode became particularly significant as a final showcase for two legendary comedians. Moms Mabley and Mantan Moreland, both pioneers who had been performing since the early decades of the 20th century, guest-starred together in an episode where they played Chet Kincaid's perpetually bickering aunt and uncle. Mabley had built a remarkable career as a stand-up comedian known for her unique persona, performing as a toothless older woman with a wicked sense of humor, while Moreland had worked extensively in film, particularly in the Charlie Chan movies of the 1930s and 40s, and was respected for his impeccable comedic timing. The episode showcased both performers in top form, playing off each other with the chemistry that comes from decades of experience in professional comedy. Their characters feuded constantly throughout the episode, with Chet trying desperately to get them to stop fighting and treat each other with kindness and respect. According to those who watched the show during its original run, Mabley and Moreland were so good in their roles that they essentially stole every scene they appeared in, even overshadowing Bill Cosby himself. What makes this episode particularly poignant in retrospect is that both comedy legends would pass away just a few years after the show aired. Moreland died in 1973 at age 71, while Mabley passed away in 1975 at age 79. Their appearance on The Bill Cosby Show represented some of their final work on television, preserving their considerable talents for future generations to appreciate. Fact 13. New theme version recorded for Season 2. The show's distinctive opening theme, Hickey Burr, was so central to The Bill Cosby Show's identity that when the second season rolled around in September of 1970, Bill Cosby and Quincy Jones made the unusual decision to record an entirely new version of the song. Most television series that keep their theme music for multiple seasons simply reuse the exact same recording year after year. But Cosby and Jones wanted something fresh. The new version featured different lyrics, or rather, different nonsense syllables in Cosby's vocal performance. Where the first season theme included phrases like, "Gonna get some raggets and some rolls and riazin' risin'," the second season version switched to lines like, "Gonna get some rabble saggets and some rebel saggets, put 'em in a pot and wait for 'em to rise, and a half pound of rebus and a half pound of craggles, stir 'em up into Sobeys." The instrumental arrangement also underwent changes, maintaining the funky, brass-heavy sound that defined the original, but with subtle differences in the musical performance and production. This decision to re-record the theme reflected the level of control Cosby had over his show and his desire to keep things evolving rather than becoming stagnant. It also demonstrated the strong creative partnership between Cosby and Quincy Jones, who clearly enjoyed working together enough to revisit and reimagine their collaboration. The fact that both versions of Hickey Burr maintained the show's signature nonsense word approach while varying the specific syllables suggests that Cosby and Jones understood what made the theme work. It wasn't about the particular words, but rather the overall vibe, rhythm, and Cosby's playful vocal delivery that captured viewers' attention during those opening seconds of each episode. Fact 14. Featured all-star jazz musicians. The recording sessions that produced the music for The Bill Cosby Show in 1969 read like a who's who of jazz legends from that era. Quincy Jones, serving as the show's musical director, assembled an absolutely stellar lineup of musicians for the jam sessions that took place at Warner Brothers 7 Art Studios in Burbank during the summer of 1969. The sessions included Milt Jackson on vibraphone, whose work on the gospel-tinged arrangement of "Oh Happy Day" added a sanctified feeling to the track. Hammond B3 organ virtuoso. Jimmy Smith pulled off what reviewers later described as a tour de force solo on Jimmy Cookin' on Top. Ray Brown, one of the most respected upright bassists in jazz history, played on numerous tracks throughout the sessions. Eddie Harris contributed tenor saxophone parts, while Toots Thielemans played a nifty guitar and whistling solo that showcased his unique ability to whistle in perfect pitch alongside his guitar work. Keyboard duties were split among several masters, including Monty Alexander, Joe Sample, who would later become famous with the Crusaders, and Les McCann, each bringing their distinctive style to different tracks. Carol Kaye handled bass duties on the versions featuring Cosby's vocals, while other musicians, including Marvin Stamm on trumpet, Tom Scott on soprano sax, Ernie Watts on tenor sax, Jimmy Cleveland on trombone, Victor Feldman on vibes, and Claire Fisher on Fender Rhodes and piano filled out the arrangements. The rhythm section featured drummers John Guerin and Paul Humphrey, who kept the funky grooves tight throughout. Guitarist Arthur Adams's work on several tracks helped establish the show's distinctive sound, blending jazz sophistication with 1960s funk sensibility. Fact 15. Networks dropped reruns. After 2015. Allegations. The legacy and availability of The Bill Cosby Show changed dramatically in the summer of 2015, when multiple television networks made the decision to stop airing the program. In July of that year, both the Aspire Television Network and the Soul of the South Network, which had been broadcasting reruns of the 1969 to 1971 series, ceased airing all episodes. This decision came in direct response to the growing number of sexual assault allegations being made against Bill Cosby by dozens of women, with accusations spanning several decades. The allegations had been gaining significant media coverage and public attention throughout 2014 and into 2015, fundamentally changing how the entertainment industry and the public viewed Cosby and his body of work. The removal of The Bill Cosby Show from these networks occurred as part of a broader industry response to the allegations. Networks also pulled reruns of The Cosby Show, Cosby's much more famous 1980s sitcom, and his other programs disappeared from streaming services and syndication packages. The situation put television executives in an unprecedented position of deciding how to handle the work of a performer who had been accused of serious crimes, balancing the jobs and creative contributions of hundreds of other people who worked on these shows against the discomfort of continuing to profit from or promote programs bearing Cosby's name. For The Bill Cosby Show specifically, which had already been relatively obscure compared to Cosby's later work, this meant it became even harder for audiences to view, essentially removing from public access a significant piece of television history that had broken important barriers for African American representation in media.